Look, if we ID, we're gonna have one more point than anybody else, even if they win, and we'll be locked for top 8. You know what? You're right. Let's take a draw. Are IDs unethical or are they okay? Oh, we are going to talk about that today. Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and we're going to touch on a topic that I don't think a lot of people have looked into deeply, and that is intentional draws. Are intentional draws okay? Well, there's a little, every so often there's like a little bit of a discussion about this, so I'm going to give my thoughts about it, and maybe we can start creating a discussion over this, because they seem to peeve some people off, especially at a competitive level, like, oh, they should have played it out, oh my god, we have nothing to watch, what is going on here, that's not competition. But at the same time, it's incredibly popular. Like, it's an incredibly popular part of Magic culture, and I think that's one of the core reasons why it's so difficult to get rid of. So I'm going to go over the pros, the cons. I'm also going to give a solution to doing away with intentional draws and why, and then I'm going to finish off why I think it is difficult for our culture to move on in another way, and why we're probably going to be having intentional draws for like many years to come. So full disclosure, I like intentional draws. I don't think they're mandatory. I think we most definitely don't need the system whatsoever. I mean, they could just they could get rid of it tomorrow and I wouldn't care. I wouldn't mind. And I think Magic can live perfectly without them, as is displayed on Magic the Gathering Online. And I think you can easily institute this in paper events. So now, before we go any further, intentional draws are not good. They're negative. They only offer you 1 point. So there's 3 ways of getting points. You can win a match of Magic, that's worth 3 points. You can lose a match of Magic, that's worth zip. Or you can end up in a draw, which by most conventions you end up going to time, and after the players take 5 turns and they neither particular player is up a game, then it's going to be a draw and they get 1 point. But in Magic, we have the option of the intentional draw, where we both say we're just gonna draw, we're gonna take a draw, we're intentionally gonna take that 1 point. So, but I'm gonna reiterate, like, I don't like people saying, oh, the people are gaming the system here, you're not playing any Magic. Well, guess what? If you won like 5, 6, 7 rounds in a row, and you have the option to ID into top 8, you played Magic. I don't know what you've been doing all tournament, but you know what? The person who ID'd, they most definitely played Magic. I'd love to see you game the system from round 1. Yeah, try to ID yourself all the way into top 8. So, yeah, let's see how that works out for you. So let's start off with the pros. Maybe I should have started off with the cons, but we're going to start off with the pros. Now this is probably the #1 reason I like IDs, and that is it rewards winners with a break. Like, literally. If you can like ID into top 8, that is fantastic. Now before the top 8 starts, you can take a break, you can go eat at McDonald's, you can go grab a tea from Tim Hortons, you get a rest, because conventionally Magic tournaments have no like lunch break, no break period. It's all up to you, and if you're jamming round after round after round after round, this is basically like the most artificial way of getting a break and taking a rest before you're going to play the most competitive part, in my opinion, most competitive part of the tournament, the top 8. So IDs are capable of rewarding people with a break, which I personally, I really like that. So next, it takes the percentage that you make top 8 go from like 95% to 100%. And maybe I don't have those numbers correct, but basically, if you can ID into top 8, you're gonna top 8 whether you play it out or not. Your breakers are the best. That's why you're on the top 4 tables. That's just how it is. And that's like how it works basically on Magic the Gathering Online. No one complains about needing like, no one complains that they can't ID on Magic the Gathering Online, because for the most part it doesn't matter. If you are in a situation where you could ID into top 8, you're just gonna top 8 anyway, playing it out. Most of the time, the thing is that I'm saying that 5% goes from 95 to 100% because 5% of the time, if you lose, you might get kicked by some like tiebreaker magic, which sort of sucks because that's completely, your tiebreakers largely are completely out of your control. Your tiebreakers can be determined because in round 6 someone decided to drop from the tournament versus someone else who ended up playing the entire tournament out, and the fact that they did that pushed someone else's tiebreakers above someone else. So the point is you throw away that portion of just pure luck, even if you have the same score as somebody else going for top 8, and you go from 95% to 100%. Now, I think a lot of people have the misconception that IDs favor pro players. I mean, I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think people get the impression like that they're shunning pro players at competitions because they take IDs. IDs favor casual players. The person who wants to get from that 95 to 100%, that's a casual player. They want that more than the pro player does. Because the pro player, if you make the strong pro player play against weaker players over and over and over again, they're going to win more often than not. So if you force strong players to play against weaker players for top 8, the stronger player is going to win just way more often than the weaker player is. And I think it is good that more casual players can lock up top 8s or lock up prizing. I think that is a good thing. I want to see my tournaments as large as possible. And honestly, I make top 8s all the time, and I see familiar faces at top 8s all the time. But it's good to see new faces there once in a while where they create the memory that they made a top 8, they made an accomplishment, and that's going to encourage them to come to way more competitive tournaments with top 8s in the future. And I like that IDs actually favor the more casual players that they're not grinders, they're not as strong as basically the pro players or the competitive players, the sharks, whatever you want to call them. Because if you force them to play it out, the stronger players will win way more often than not, decreasing the chances that those, basically giving that 5% chance that the casual players will get kicked out. And that's going to be a super feel-bad moment for them. So, and lastly, a pro is that it gives friends the option to defer their risk of making top 8 to another round. Let me explain. Let's take 2 friends who are both X and 1, and it's the second last round of Swiss, and they end up getting paired up against each other. Now they're in a situation where if one wins, they know that they can ID into top 8. So it's basically a win and in match. But the person who loses, they're out. It's over. They're not going to make top 8 anymore. They have the option, and I've seen this exercise by many people before, to take an ID in the second last round, go X1 and 1 going in the last round, and they both have a chance of winning and making the top 8 without putting either of them in the situation of eliminating their own friend. I've seen this happen many times, so I think it's interesting that this tool can be used to basically alleviate some social feelings they have within their group. And make no mistake, when you go to tournaments, you go with your friends all the time. So these situations happen constantly. And of course, there's gonna be a lot of situations where you have no choice. I mean, you're playing for top 8 or not, and you have no option to draw. But it gives, in some situations, the option to defer their risk. So anyway, that's one more pro. Let's talk about the cons. So first off, let's just talk about the obvious one. The con of IDs is that while we said that it locks a 95%er to a 100%er, that means you're depriving someone of a 5% chance of making top 8. Is that fair? I mean, that's debatable now. Like I said, this system favors the casual players. So that means this punishes the best players, the competitive players that played it out to the end, they won their match, and deprives them of that 5%. So now another con is that you're actually playing for something, and that's seeding. Whoever is higher in ranking after the Swiss is going to have choice whether they want to take the play or the draw. It's not going to be determined by die roll. So you are actually playing for something. And so if people, let's say the top 2 tables take IDs, table 3 now might have no chance of actually having a higher seeding because the top 4 basically lock themselves up. And if you force the top 2 tables to play it out, and there's going to be 2 winners and 2 losers, table 3 has a higher chance of moving up in seeding and ranking after the Swiss pairings, which gives them the opportunity to have the play. So there might be something to play for that is robbed if people take IDs. Now, another thing, and maybe this is one of the most important things, but I don't think this is really that big of a deal, is that it's bad for coverage. It's bad for tournament organizers. I mean, you put up this big prize pool, and you have all these cameras, and you've got commentators recording the matches, and all of a sudden, the players don't play. Well, that's a little bit lame now, isn't it? But the thing is, okay, let's be serious. There's a million matches to watch. All right, somebody is playing in the last round, got it? So if someone's playing, so there's always a replacement match. I don't think this is really worth mentioning. And like people bring up the argument, this doesn't happen in football, it doesn't happen in hockey, but you know what? Those people are paid to play. And if you don't play, well, then maybe you shouldn't get paid either. Maybe we're going to cut them contracts out. Whereas it comes to Magic the Gathering, everyone, generally speaking, in a lot of events, you're there. You're there on your own accord, and you're fighting for prize money. Then the prize money basically means everything. Not entirely. That's not the entire story. Some people are invited. They have appearance fees. So I mean, I could totally see a world where if you are literally a promotional player and you're getting paid with appearance fees, you are not allowed to ID anymore. And if you dare try, you're going to not get invited to our tournaments anymore. And because we don't want to encourage that behavior. That's totally up to Wizards if they want to do that. But for the most part, there's always something to watch on coverage. And the last one is that it goes against the spirit of the game. You could still play it out, and you're there for a tournament. What do you want to do? I mean, there's definitely all those sorts of groups of players where they'll ID and then they'll start they'll determine, well, I have no chance in this stack top 8, so I'll just dump 3 points to you. And then I've been in so many tournaments where there's a few particular players that barely even play around because teams have organized who should win whatever games or what deck should make the top 8 pending the top 8 circumstances. So I mean, play the point of being in a tournament at the very, I mean, I know you're supposed to win the tournament. That's the point of being there in the first place, but it still goes against the spirit of the game to create non-games, to give the players the option to have non-games. So, there's definitely that, and I can respect that significantly. So, now let's get to the really juicy part of all of this, and that is, do we need IDs? Are they even necessary? No! IDs are not necessary. We do not need them at all. Wizards of the Coast tomorrow can just snap their fingers, take them away, and that's it. That's the end of the story. Play the game out. Just do it. Then there's, and a lot of people think there should be no IDs for digital Magic, but IDs for paper Magic is okay. What the hell is wrong with you? Just say you cannot have an intentional draw. You have to play it out. Play the game. And then there's going to be weird people that are like, well, the incentives aren't really there, and you're going to get people who are going to fake the game, and you're just going to get them to play it out, and it's going to go to a draw anyway, so just give them the option to have an ID. Do you realize that faking the game and dragging it out to time is called stalling? That's cheating. You know that, right? Incentives. So, you're trying to tell me that if we don't give you IDs that you're going to cheat? Is that what you're telling me? You're a cheater. You're basically telling me right here that you're a cheater. So, anyone who tries to defend this, it's not looking good because we already have rules in place to prevent what's called stalling. And if you want to stall, judges are going to look out for it. So let me tell you, when everything's on the line, and you've played 14 rounds of a GP already, you're in contention for a top 8, are you gonna basically fake it with your opponent, whether you know them very well or not, to basically pretend to make a draw and to get into top 8? Are you gonna risk that? There's a lot of games that play out that there's no decisions to make. You have your hand, you have your lands, and you play your spells. And what are you going to do? Go into the tank really hard every turn? The judges are going to tell you that you're slow playing. So like they're going to catch this. They're going to be looking out for it, and they're going to disqualify you because that is the penalty for stalling. So I don't actually think, as much as people like to, first off, like it's just cheating, okay? Don't cheat. And it's just not going to happen. You just tell people you have to play the game out. That's it. That's it. Okay, some control players will get around it. But for the most part, because like it's control players can easily make a draw even when they're trying. But for the most part, most people are not going to be able to do this. And the game is going to go out to a natural conclusion. If it's Burn versus Tron, they're not going to have that many decisions to make. And one side is going to crush the other. So I don't think it's really that big of a deal. And yeah, we absolutely do not need IDs, and I would, care less if they disappeared tomorrow. So if Wizards at a moment's notice wants to dismantle this system, then absolutely they could. And I don't even think it's very hard to enforce. I really don't think so, because we already have rules against stalling. Now here's the interesting part. Every so often people bring up that, IDs are bad, oh, it's bad for the game, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes down to it, people love IDs. They love it. Oh, the moment they realize, oh my God, I'm just 1 point away from locking top 8. They are snap offering the draw and they make top 8. Everyone's all smiles. And then the people who are anti-ID, when the chips are down and the stakes are high and the pressure's on them, they're in there with their hand, giving the handshake to the draw just like everybody else. I do not know, even to this day, anybody who stands up to that principle. I have never been to a tournament where on table 2, they're playing it out after the last round of Swiss, and I'm like, hey, Harry and Bob, can't they just agree to a draw and make top 8? No. Bob doesn't believe in IDs. No. And then like, okay, I understand. I totally get it. No, that doesn't happen. That never happens. I've never seen that. So when it comes down to it, basically, no one can stand up to this because people don't like risk. It would be a super feel bad moment if you become that 5% that ends up getting knocked out. I understand. And like I said, I'm sort of defending that 5% because it's mostly the casual players that are getting punished, and you're basically rewarding the pros. And I don't have any problem with rewarding casual players. That's my argument there. So the point is, this has just been a part of Magic culture that, for the most part, everyone likes. You can let me know in the comment section below if you really feel so passionately against this. And if you are against, you better be backing it up with stories that you said, no, I played it out when I was at risk on table 4, blah, 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 blah. But usually I've never heard this story. It's never happened. It's absolutely never happened. So if you want to change the culture, you better show Wizards that there really actually needs to be a culture to be changed, because I think, in my opinion, most people do like IDs. Despite the cons, the pros outweigh them mostly psychologically for people. So anyway, those are my comments on IDs. Maybe we can stir up a discussion about this. I hope I brought up points people never thought about before. And yeah, I got a YouTube channel. I'm doing pretty good. So I love giving my opinion on stuff like this. Anyway, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about intentional draws.